New homes in the United States slumping in the month of October to the lowest in almost 2 years. Two hurricanes, of course, hitting the South, and affordability challenges continue to weigh on buyers. We also got some data, Tim, on home price gains.
Yeah, this is really interesting. New single-family home sales decreased 17% last month to 610,000 annualized rate. That's according to government data issued Tuesday. Home price gains in the U.S. slowed in September, too, as buyers gained more negotiating power in the housing market. That national gauge of prices rose 3.9% from a year earlier. That's according to S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller.
And I'm figuring it plays into supply and demand, but let's see what our next guest has to say, because she has a front seat when it comes to the housing market. Katie Hubbard is Executive VP of Capital Markets of the privately owned asset and real estate investment firm. They are Walton Global. They've got nearly $4.4 billion of land under management, over 90,000 acres under management throughout the United States, and they operate in the retail, industrial, and commercial sectors. Katie joining us from Denver. Katie, good to have you here with us. How are you, and how would you characterize the U.S. housing market today?
Hi, Carol. Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. And yes, we definitely see that October had a lot of noise in it. As you mentioned, we had two hurricanes. Mortgage rates rose in October quite a bit. But it was a very regional outlook that came out. So the South specifically dropped 27% in sales, while the Northeast picked up 53% in sales. So you just got to look at those regional areas.
I want to talk a little bit about where you are in the ecosystem of real estate, because you guys operate in a really interesting space. The idea is you buy land and hold on to it until developers who want to build homes want to develop that land, and then you sell it to them. So certainly interest rate environment is really important to you. How do you feel about the rate environment and the rate path moving forward, and how that's going to affect your business?
Yeah, so our clients are typically the largest public home builders, and the rate environment obviously is affecting all of the home builders, but the large ones that have the scale and the ability to buy down rates have been doing just that and been gaining market share in a rising rate environment. It's been good for the large home builders who are more competitive.
So it's okay? That's what's hard to understand, because the idea is when rates go down, people can afford to buy more homes. Hopefully, that's the idea. We haven't really seen that play out necessarily, just because of the supply and demand element here. But how does it affect the way that home builders then come to you to purchase land?
Yeah, it definitely, just because we're typically feeding the land to the largest public home builders, and they're less rate sensitive. The smaller builders that don't have the ability to buy down the rates are more effective and can't really compete in the land space as well as the large builders. We're also purchasing land ahead of needing it right now, so they're keeping it off balance sheet, where smaller builders who are also affected by the mortgages, they don't have the ability to land bank like the larger competitors do. But obviously, when rates go down, in that sweet spot, when it goes below 6%, there's a lot of people on the sidelines right now that are waiting for that, and we think that that's going to be coming up into the next year. Probably won't be hitting below 6% this year, but next year could get a lot of consumers off the sidelines.
Katie, one thing I'm curious about, and I want to get your take on this, and we want to get into kind of what people want in homes going forward. I don't know if the mega mansion or the McMansions are gone, but before we do that, we talk about the housing shortages in the United States. It's not just a 1 or 2 or 3 year thing. It's at least 10 years, if not more. And that you don't have affordable housing in great cities, be it New York or elsewhere, for those people who work in the city but can't afford to live there. So it's not just about building housing, but building housing, affordable housing, where it needs to be. So when you guys are acquiring land, is it in major cities? Is it suburbs? Is it really feeding the demand that needs to be met?
Yeah, good question. So it's regionally based, but we are typically on the outskirts of the cities where home builders can build larger scale communities versus those infill locations, because we're dealing on a larger scale land supply. But yeah, absolutely, the home builders have adjusted the type of product mixes that they're building to just for that affordability factor. They're building more efficient floor plans. Everything is getting smaller kitchens, smaller garages, smaller storage to build a smaller home just to make it more affordable. And they're doing higher density, to your point, Carol. So less McMansions and more amenities geared towards the people that are able to purchase the homes. So you're seeing more pickleball courts out there.
It's kind of funny. What's considered affordable? What do you guys consider affordable housing? And I know it's geography, and I understand that, but give me an idea. Yeah.
And so the average new home is just hitting around the $467,000 range. And people are moving to the Northeast now for affordability. I mean, you can,
Wow.
Youngstown, Ohio, you can get a house for $171,000. It's one of the most affordable markets. And then they're going to where their jobs are located. So, for example, Syracuse, New York has a huge influx of people because Micron's building $100 billion chip manufacturing plant. So if the jobs are there, then, it's relative to that market. But Southern California, I mean, it's still one of the most expensive markets and one of the most difficult places to build because land is so expensive. So it is very relative, like you said.
Well, that said, you do have quite a few assets in the state of California, quite a few in the San Diego area, a few in the Bay Area as well. What is attractive to you about that area, given how expensive it is and how difficult it is for some home builders to actually build in California?
Doesn't scream affordable to me.
Right. It's the overall fundamentals of people wanting to be in Southern California. So the demand is there and you have a scarcity of land that's available for development. You used to have this mentality of, people didn't want things built in their backyard, the NIMBY mentality. Well, in California, it goes a step further. It's now called the banana mentality, which is build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. So it makes it more
I've heard that
difficult.
before.
Have you?
For
No,
land.
I've never heard that. That's the banana, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that
Remember
is it can be the California mentality. And so if you have the expertise and the boots on the ground to buy the land for the builders, the demand for people wanting to live there is there.
Nuts.
Wow.
Looking at the map of your website in terms of where you guys, I guess, have land and land assets specifically, Atlanta, is it still on fire for you guys, or is that property land just sitting kind of empty and demand has cooled?
There definitely is demand there, but you are seeing less demand in the South. Like I mentioned, the October numbers for the Southeast were down, but I mean, it's still a good place for migration for the affordability factor.
Texas too? Are people still flocking
Texas continues to be a stronghold. Almost all of the top public builders have a very large presence in Texas, but we're moving to places in the Northeast like Delaware, where the public builders have told us they will take all of the land that we can bring them in a place like Delaware, because you've got low property taxes, no Social Security income tax, strong employment, great schools, and the surrounding cities are just much more expensive.
You basically, in 30 seconds, just tell us, you basically have no assets in the sort of northwest quadrant of the United States. I mean, all the way from Iowa to Washington and Oregon. Why is that?
We're going to be expanding our acquisition strategy. So we're going to be entering the Idaho market. We do land bank for D.R. Horton in the Northwest. So we do have some assets holding land off balance sheet for them. So those are markets that we're exploring.
Where's the most expensive place to buy land right now? Just 10 seconds.
Southern California. I mean, California markets are the most expensive and the most difficult.
Hey, that sun is going to, perfect weather is going to cost you, Carol Massar.
Of course it does.
Pacific Ocean's expensive.
Yeah.
Katie Hubbard, thank you so much. Executive Vice President, Capital Markets at the privately owned asset and real estate investment company, Walton Global. Coming up, everybody, Qualcomm maybe sort of kind of over you, Intel. We'll explain. That's next.